Well, folks, thanks for joining today. I'm telling you, every day is a day of news, but today it's incredible. It's overwhelming what is going on the headlines around the world. Let's jump right to it. And thanks again for all of you to continue joining in, listening, or watching at Spotify or over there on YouTube and other platforms. And we're seeing the numbers increase every day because people want to know and want to get some information that's behind some of the stories that you see in mainstream media and which you won't always get in mainstream media. Looking at the story of the day, and I have to say it's not exaggeration to say that the Gaza peace deal, for lack of a better title, has to be one of the stories so far this century. It is gigantic in terms of its ramifications. The story behind that is much of mainstream media, if we're talking about CNN, if we're talking about CBC in Canada, just doesn't seem to be that happy about it. Here we have a deal that's been signed, worked on, and put together by Muslim nations working with Donald Trump. And there's the key right there to much of the undercurrent of anger that this deal is going ahead and that Hamas has signed it, at least the first step. We're taking it a step at a time. People cannot stand the fact that Donald Trump was central to this deal coming forward. They ignore the fact that Muslim nations are supporting Trump in this deal, that Muslim nations are saying to Hamas to stop what they're doing and come up with a situation that's going to bring real peace and prosperity, if it goes forward, to the people who live in Gaza. So amazing to watch, and it's going to be, people will be glued to their devices and to their screens, I can tell you, as we watch from Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. I've been down there to that particular area. It's a beautiful area and symbolic in terms of this being an Egyptian area where the deal will be signed. So I would say to the folks who can't seem to handle the fact that Trump was somehow involved in achieving this first step towards peace, just get over it. Be thankful that the people of Gaza might finally have a pathway to prosperity and peace now, and give your heads a shake. Let's hope it continues to hold together. If you go to X and look at my post on X, there's an excellent article there put up there today by somebody who was raised in Gaza, somebody who knows the Middle East, and might give you a little different perspective than you're going to get from mainstream media. Well, coinciding partly with this announcement is the rise of, or what we've seen is the rise of gold. The value of gold has broken through as recently as yesterday the $4,000 per ounce mark. That's gigantic. That's very significant. And why does gold go up? Keep in mind that gold will go up right in inverse relation to other problems in other countries. As you have situations where people are wondering about the financial system, we look at the weakening American dollar, so there will be a retreat then or an advancement to gold. When you look at countries continually announcing more and more their record-breaking deficits, as Canada has done, that makes people nervous, and they'll retreat to something that is stable again, which is gold. Am I predicting that it's going to continue to go up, the price of gold, the value of gold? And am I advising people to be buying gold? No, I'm not doing either of those. I'm just giving you commentary that when there is long-term turmoil and uncertainty, people will resort to gold. And not just people, but as is being reported, central banks are buying up gold also because they see on their own balance sheets there are problems and there are concerns. Now, look at the flip side. When you have stability and when you have things like peace being possible, you see a return to currencies. For instance, just today, there's been quite a jump upward in Israel's stock market, in shares in Israel's business, and in the value of Israeli currency. Why is that? Because it looks like there's going to be peace, because it looks like there's going to be stability. So when you're thinking about who you're going to be voting for, whatever country you're living in, If you are voting for governments and politicians who don't seem to have a high regard for things like debt and deficit, then you are voting for more turmoil. And I guess the best thing you can do is just buy gold, because elected and parties that do not understand how finances work and do not understand the devastating effect of continuing to increase spending and increase taxes and how that's going to harm an economy, then all you're doing is pushing up the price of gold. So keep that in mind. Another announcement yesterday that shows something significant on the social or cultural side is the announcement of the arrest of the person who actually started the California fires, the so-called Palisade fires that were so destructive in the Los Angeles area just recently. And as I've been saying, and as you've been hearing on this particular podcast, and you've been seeing in my columns for a number of years now, governments need to recognize and talk more about the fact that most forest fires, and this is statistically accurate and proven, are human started. Some of those are accidental. Many of them are started on purpose. That's called arson. And again, mainstream media doesn't like to acknowledge that fact. They just keep saying, it's global warming and the world is exploding and we're all burning and we're all going to die in a great incendiary catastrophe. Governments need to recognize and do something about the fact that a significant number of these terrible fires are actually purposely started by people. That's called arson. What's to do about that? Well, governments need to look at, and I'm sorry if I sound like a conservative resorting to criminal justice measures, but one of the things that has to be done, governments need to be changing their laws and saying that arson could get you life in jail. Because these fires many times kill people. Many people die in the fires. The damages are in the billions of dollars. People lose their homes and their livelihoods, all because of selfish acts of arson. I would encourage governments to be making it very public about the fact that arsons are going to jail for life. That's just one of a number of things that needs to be done. The other thing, we've talked about this, is the development literally of that network of space age, if you want to call it, network of drones that are able, especially in forested areas, especially in countries like Canada, to be augmenting the present satellite structures that are up there, 24/7 surveillance. We have the capabilities to do it. There is a cost to it for governments to putting in and increased surveillance areas over thousands and thousands of square miles or square kilometers or hectares of forest. There is a cost, but the cost for improving that satellite system, that system that will spot the first small signs of smoke so that first responders can get immediately to a fire, that cost is far less than the cost of fires. Once they're up and raging, they are unstoppable until they burn out. So let's look at some change in policy there, and both governments and media waking up with the devastation that arsonists are bringing to our country and in fact around the world. Here's an interesting story just out in terms of arson in Canada. As you know, it's been well documented, and I've been posting, and you've been seeing it in the news. Just in the last 3 years, over 120 churches have been burned in Canada, all by arsons. Many of those have been caught and apprehended. It is hardly ever reported in the media who these people are. We have not yet changed our laws in Canada to say that this could be life imprisonment with minimum mandatories at a very high level for arsonists. And this interesting story that's quite interesting on this latest one that's just out today. You've seen as the reporting of the 120 churches, as it's starting to get a little more profile, and the conservative leader of the opposition in Canada, Pierre Poilievre, has brought this up, highlighted this, and made a comment that Christians are the most persecuted people. And it's very interesting to see mainstream media attacking him for that. CBC in Canada, CNN. What is with these left-leaning news outlets and media that they can't stand the fact that somebody might say Christians also are being persecuted. So a well-known person in media in Canada, a gentleman by the name of Peter Menzies, did some recent research, and he called the CBC to see why there was so little, almost negligible reporting on the burning down of a beautiful church in Alberta, Greek Orthodox church, well over a century old, a historical site, and it was broken into. Many of the artifacts in there were stolen, and the church burned. It was done by ARSONS, and very little coverage of it by CBC. So when Peter Menzies contacted them for comment, they said, we just had so many staff covering other important things. We just haven't had the time to cover that one. That's a pretty significant story when architecture of this type, and also being a Christian facility, has been torched, and it's done by ARSONS. And so I did a little research myself on that particular day when that happened, September 21. What was the media covering just in that area, just in Alberta, on the 22nd? And so yeah, it's fascinating to see. They say they just didn't have the people to cover it. Well, one story they spent quite a bit of time on was covering a hailstorm that had happened in southern Alberta, and of course reflecting again that climate change is, destroying the world, and we're all about to die. But it was interesting, that particular hailstorm had happened in August, and they were giving more reporting on it in September at the time of the burning of this church, where they said they didn't have the staff to cover the story. And then there was a huge amount of resources to an important story on LGBTQ concerns about which books might be taken away from children. So CBC seems to have the resources and the manpower and woman power to cover other elements, but something like the ongoing story of churches being torched and ARSONS being arrested, very little coverage. Interesting note there. You might want to consider where you're getting your news from. There is the positive announcement about a huge investment of infrastructure and money coming again into Alberta. Not wanting to focus on the province of Alberta in Canada today, but sometimes these are signal points of what's happening on a larger trend. And so, yes, indeed, it does appear that Meta and Pembina, a huge company, along with Connecticut, are indeed going ahead with a massive multi-billion-dollar investment in the northern part of Alberta related to building an AI center. And they're doing that because liquid natural gas is going to be used to cover the giant energy drain that comes from these AI-related facilities. Now, around the world, there's a number of companies announced that they're going to be using nuclear power, which I think is good. It's smart. It's a very safe means, these mini nuclear power operation, but they take years to build, and the regulatory hoops are phenomenal. So we're seeing much of the world starting to recognize that refined liquid natural gas can really be used in a positive way, and the net effect of that, especially when you are propelling and giving energy to places like massive AI centers, which are going to be continuing to find more efficient ways. AI itself will come up with the breakthroughs in terms of ongoing emissions reduction around the world. So great story there, very positive. Again, not a lot of coverage on mainstream media, but coverage everywhere. And that development definitely looks as though it's going to happen. And keep one eye on that, and one eye on the increasing mainstream media panic. And this is globally, that they are realizing they're losing the narrative about I call it the environmental extremist message. We all care about the environment, and there are many measures in place to look at making for and maintaining a clean environment. But mainstream media is losing the narrative, as it's becoming clear that energy actually can be used in a way that leads to reduced emissions worldwide. So keep an eye on these stories. Talking about cultural shifts, there's a phenomenon going on right now. We'll see if it's going to be a trend or if it's something that's going to be longer term. And that's the trend, especially among Gen Z, among younger people, to moving away from using their iPhone devices to going, I'm going to say, back to the flip phone or forward to the flip phone. And the flip phones today, of course, have dropped a lot in price and they're very convenient. But it's been a very significant trend away from the iPhone because the flip phone, really, it's good for texting and good for some messages, but it's a little more cumbersome and not as fast. And the investigations that have gone into this, people looking at this culturally, are saying that maybe the message is sinking in, that doom scrolling, as they call it, is really not healthy, that the fixation multiple hours per day on a device alone, regardless of what you're watching, actually has physiological effects on the brain. And the increasing concerns around exposure to, for instance, the availability of porn and what that does to actual brain function and what it's doing sociologically in terms of how it affects people. The constant availability on devices of just looking at oneself and being totally consumed with how you are being seen, what other people are saying about you. All of these things are having such impact negatively on people's anxiety levels, on mental health. And it's young people who seem to be leading the charge here, abandoning the iPhones, abandoning the iPads, and going to the much simpler flip phone. It's a trend right now. We'll see if it continues, but it's something that's interesting to watch. And ending out today's stories on the culture side, yes, Canadians are very happy that the Toronto Blue Jays sent the New York Yankees packing. It was really a phenomenal series to watch. But here's an interesting cultural element to it. The unfortunate anti-Americanism and some anti-Canadianism now in the U.S. because of the anti-Americanism, it shows up at sporting events. So here we have Canadians delighted with the fact that the Blue Jays beat the Yankees. And really, when you look at it, it's sort of interesting and worth a smile or two. On the entire Toronto Blue Jays roster, the entire team, there's only one Canadian. So it's Canadians cheering for Americans beating Americans. And I see that at least at one of the games in New York, in reaction to fans booing in Canada at previous games, so some of the New York Yankee fans booed the Canadian anthem. And in fact, there we have a case where Americans are just booing other Americans. It's all Americans who are playing for the Toronto Blue Jays. So I'm looking forward to the day when we can just enjoy good, exciting sport, good games, good athleticism being celebrated in all the positive aspects of sport, and realizing that really nothing is much to be gained by Canadians cheering on their own Americans to beat other Americans. Let's watch the next series and hoping the Toronto Blue Jays take it to the top. Have a great day.